Maybe I'll start it off while we're waiting to be able to get people to ask questions and say, I'm feeling a little bit jealous of these students because I don't think I got any of this great advice when I was a medical student particularly. And so I am just so grateful to you all for the advances that are happening in how we think about medical students transitioning. And thank you, Dr. Avidan, for putting your email address in there so people have access to it. I guess I'm like, okay, I know it's all going to work fine soon. Where's Olivia gone? Oh, Zoom is blocking them. So we're sorry we can't see your faces today. Technical difficulties. We'll get that ironed out for next time. But in the meantime, if you have questions, pop them in the Q&A and I will ask them for you. And Olivia's going to keep working on it. So if you become suddenly popping into our things, it'll be great. One of our attendees has a question. Oh, I can let him talk. So Tim, please introduce yourself and ask a question.
Hi, thank you. Yes, my name is Tim. I'm a first-year medical student at UC San Diego. And I really appreciated, first off, just hearing a lot of these presentations, and I think it was great to learn a lot. One of my questions that I had was, how do anesthesiology programs view gap research if students were to take a year between like year 3 and 4?
Norah, do you want to answer that?
I think that I guess I'll just say I think it would look very favorably, you know, on it. Again, it's really a reflection of initiative and really wanting to look at, you know, in this case, we'll say a question or a research question or a in a deeper way, in an innovative way, and to, you know, presumably learn even more those, you know, skills that you would acquire doing that, and really associating with the people, with the research team that you are working with. So, you know, it has a lot of great opportunity, a full year of research for sure, and I think that would look favorably, and it wouldn't necessarily even have to be within anesthesiology. It makes sense that it should be, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be. And I think a lot of what would be looked at the most would just be how how productive it was and the sort of relationships that were formed. And it is a great way to get a letter of recommendation from someone that really, or people that came to grow you really pretty closely. And I think it's hard to get high quality letters of recommendation just simply through medical school sometimes. And so it could also be favorable in that way.
Dr. Avidan, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tim, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I work with a lot of medical students and have over the last 2 decades. I strongly encourage them to consider taking a year, for example, to do the TL1 program, which many of your medical schools might have through the CTSA. And many scholars have then received a Master of Science in Clinical Investigation, and many of them have now already gone on to become leaders in anesthesiology over the years, as I've been watching them and been delighted in seeing their growth and their progress. I think that the general comment I'd like to make, Tim, is one of lived experience. I think that the more diverse and interesting your life experience can be, these are things that our program certainly looks at favorably. If people have had other work experience, if they've lived in different places around the world, whatever the, we think that it brings a level of growth and maturity and compassion and insight that can be helpful to you as a physician, as a clinician, and as a caring and empathetic human being. So certainly taking time off to do research is very, very beneficial, but any life experience that allows you to grow and to broaden your experiences, I think will help you not just to get into programs, but to be a better all-round clinician with more insight and empathy and connection with your patients and colleagues. Thanks, Harriet.
Thank you both. That was a great question, great answers. Julia, you had your hand up and now it's down.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Julia Versel. I go to Loyola University Chicago Stritch School of Medicine. And I have a question on the use of Twitter in the residency application process. Is it a must-have, do you think, in the virtual world that we're increasingly immersed in? I personally have some hesitancy towards joining Twitter, so I wanted to hear your thoughts and also acknowledge that I do recognize its benefits. So thank you so much.
I think, Julia, I'm probably showing my a little bit of my, so I think some Twitter's great. I think a lot of Twitter can drive you absolutely crazy. And so because it can get somewhat frenetic and a little bit, I think sometimes it might drive people to more anxiety, I think, about, for example, applying to residency than is honestly necessary. So I think you can learn about programs, you can learn about the people of those programs, but I would engage in it really from that perspective. I as a program director at Michigan, the presence of an applicant on Twitter is not something that I really pay too much attention to.
Michael, do you have any thoughts on that? I think that the fear of social media has bothered me because I think it's a great outlet.
I think, Julia, certainly a very valid question. I don't think that you're at any disadvantage from not being on Twitter. I'm on Twitter, and anybody's welcome to connect with me on Twitter. I only post things that are professionally relevant. So for example, if there are articles that I think are interesting in the academic sphere and things that are relevant to our department. So I do think that if you want to get information about our department, you can use Twitter as one of your informational resources, but there are many other informational resources, and there's very little, I don't want you to be anxious, be energetic, be optimistic, and be authentic. If you're a person who loves being on social media and using it in a constructive way to convey knowledge and gain knowledge, that's good. And if you're a person who prefers different methods, whether they're more traditional or whatever it is, that's good too, because what we're looking for is people who have different strengths, different interests, different backgrounds. And by having that assortment of people with a whole lot of different strengths that they bring to the table, as I said in the talk that I gave, that brings strength to our program. So Julia, we welcome Luddites, and we welcome people who are thinking in the 25th century. You're all welcome in anesthesiology. There's a home for you, and you bring many different and diverse strengths. Thanks, Harriet.
Fantastic. Okay, I think you're slowly all getting moved over here. So if you have video access and you want to turn on your video, we would love to see your faces. I know it wasn't letting you before, and not all of you are quite here yet, but you're on your way. And now Kalkena.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions, actually. So I go to Washington State University. I'm a second year, but I'm thinking perhaps for residency that I want to move away from the Northwest towards the Southeast because my family is here. And one of the things I had heard before is that, you know, that name recognition in the letter comes a lot from regional affiliations. So I was wondering, do you think that it's extremely important that my letters come from people closer to the region where I want to do my residency, or does it not matter as much?
Maybe Norah, this is for you.
It is very true that program directors will take a little bit of a look at if an applicant is what kind of connections they might have to a region, in particular the region that the program is in. And it's really just one of practicality. There's only so many spots that are going to match, and there's only so many applicants that they can interview. It is very true that medical students will always, for years and years, have indicated that location of the program was the number1 reason for ranking a program high on the rank list. Having said that, just explaining or why you are interested in a region that might not be the region that you're in medical school or where you're from, just addressing it maybe in your personal statement or other areas in the application really goes a long way. And as a program director, that's really all I would want to see, that you have a connection or a reason for wanting to, for example, in this case, move to the Southeast, and that's why you're looking at programs in the Southeast. And that would be really, in my view, adequate.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a second question, and Lauren, are you willing about letters of recommendation? Lauren, do you want to unmute and ask the question yourself? I know you popped it into the chat.
Sure, no problem. Again, to reiterate what everyone else is saying, thank you both for attending. We really appreciate it. My name is Lauren Pomerantz, and I am a 4th-year medical student at University of Central Florida College of Medicine. So I'll actually be applying for this current cycle. And because we were just talking about letters of recommendation, it made me think of a question. I know that typically anesthesiology departments recommend about 3 to 4 letters of recommendation, depending on the program. And I've heard some mixed things regarding whether you'd prefer to have all anesthesiology letters, or if it would be better to try to diversify, whether we get letters from perhaps surgery or internal medicine, or where you like to see those letters come from, and if either can help or hurt us. So I just would love to hear your opinions on that. Thank you again.
Lauren, I'm happy to start, and I'm sure Norah may have things to add. So I think that the key point with letters of recommendation is that the letter writers should be people who know you well and will advocate for you as individuals with personal knowledge of you. So the less that it is a rote letter, and the more that it is a letter that reflects who you are as an individual and why you're recommended uniquely and strongly for anesthesiology residency, the more compelling that will be. From my perspective, it doesn't matter in which specialty the letter writer is. I think that of your letters of recommendation, there should be at least 1 or 2 from people in anesthesiology. They can't all be from people outside of anesthesiology, because that would just be confusing, because it's people with whom you've interacted in anesthesiology who'd best be able to convey why you're a really great fit for anesthesiology. And it doesn't have to be 4 out of 4. So, you know, if you happened to work very closely with a surgeon or an epidemiologist in a research study, or whoever it was, and they provided a very strong narrative regarding some of your specific strengths. So, you know, if somebody said, you know, Lauren has a real interest in public health and in global health. And I was amazed at how she really, during the pandemic, looked at the impact of COVID-19 on people in different communities in different countries. That's very specific, that's very interesting, and that is something that I, as a reader of the letter, would remember. You know, so I think that is more important to me. Norah, please feel free to add to my answer.
No, I completely agree with all of that. It really is about what is being said in the letter and not so much about where really, I think, who or what specialty the letter writer, identifies the letter writer. However, I do agree that at least one letter should be from an anesthesiologist. The specialty is so unique, and the training environment so unique that I think that any program would want to sort of know that you at least had a taste for the learning and environment called anesthesiology. It would really be confusing to have not one letter from an anesthesiologist, but otherwise I completely agree with everything that Dr. Avidan discussed.
Okay, thank you both. Dannah Rae?
Hi, my name is Dannah Rae. I'm a rising fourth-year medical student from the New York Institute of Tech College of Osteopathic Medicine. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very informative. Given that I come from an institution with no anesthesia home program, do you think a rotation experience in a community or a private practice would hold just as much weight, for instance, at a private pain practice? Or would you recommend that I have an away rotation in an academic institution during this upcoming cycle?
So Dana, based on what you contrasted, which was a sort of a rotation, if you will, in a community setting, possibly even with a pain group, versus a rotation in an academic setting, not knowing all the details, I would recommend a rotation in an academic setting.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I think for most DO students, there's an additional cost to do rotations at academic settings, and I think that really, highlights the idea of inclusion and welcoming. So I don't know, Michael, if you'd like to address that.
Yeah, I think that Dannah Rae, it is important that my understanding from your question, and you can maybe say if I'm right in this, that your clinical exposure to anesthesiology and related fields is somewhat limited in the specific institution in which you're training, and that you would need to have some sort of externship, and it could be with community practices associated with where you're training, or you could seek to go to an academic program. And if there were constraints, if there were absolutely no constraints and you could go anywhere, then it certainly might be preferable for you to go to a strong academic program like the University of Michigan. But I think that the key thing is that we want to see that you have a compelling narrative, that you understand why you want to do anesthesiology, and that your experiences have been meaningful in that regard. So I don't think that it would preclude your application being considered. I think that we need to be, it's also important for applicants to challenge us. And certainly Dr. Naughton referred to that we need to expand our own way of thinking. Although in my presentation, I spoke about the USMLE Step 1 score, I'm aware that in January 2022, it's going to become pass-fail. But regardless of that, already in the last cycle, I was saying to people, forget the USMLE Step 2 score, the USMLE scores. This is not our priority. We need to think more broadly about the people who are interested in anesthesiology, and understand that people come from many different experiences, and we have to have a less constrained view of who will enrich our specialty and drive us forward. So Dannah Rae, I'm sure that you would be a very compelling applicant. You're already showing initiative, you're already showing interest, and there are lots of ways to indicate that. And feel free to reach out to Dr. Naughton or to me or to Dr. Hopf directly, and we would be happy maybe even to provide you with some, personalized feedback and advice, because it's a bit hard with the general question, and sometimes it's more helpful to know more details about somebody's individual situation. Perhaps we could be more helpful to you. So you have our email addresses, and I know that Dr. Naughton would be happy to hear from you. The same applies to me, and I'm sure that Dr. Hopf would say the same too.
Thank you so much. I will definitely reach out because my situation is very particular.
And Dannah Rae, I would remind you that as an MSARF student this summer, you will be meeting and working with academic anesthesiologists who are fabulous people to write you letters. And so that is one opportunity you have. I know we have more questions to go. We are at time. And so given the generousness of our speakers in providing their email addresses, I'm going to say, sorry, no more time for questions. And we're going to end the session. I can't tell you how grateful I am to Drs. Avidan and Naughton for sharing their wisdom. That was just amazing. And also to all of you for attending and for stepping up and asking questions. And they were really great questions. And I'm sure the people who didn't ask questions were like, yeah, that's exactly what I was asking. So a reminder, if you have a question, so does somebody else. I hope you all have a great day.